And good morning all. Simple little composition here today. A couple of trees, or it's actually a single tree with two trunks on the right hand side and a little collection of buildings over there on the left. This is a 7 by 9.5 sheet of 140-pound cold pressed paper. And I got my board on a tilt. So I did my rough sketch with a really hard lead pencil. And now I'm just going about the inking with my Lamy extra fine, Lamy Safari extra fine nib fountain pen. And I'm obviously using some waterproof ink, and it's actually Diatramentus Documenting is what I'm using. So I'm going to jump right into the painting here. I'm showing my giant palette there on the right, a recent purchase. I'm going with a wet on dry for the horizon. So rather than paint around the buildings with water, I'm going at it today with straight in with pigment. So that's like a Naples yellow that I'm using with just a bit of orange in it. I don't want it to be too dominant because I'm going to put a cobalt sky at the top, or the top of the sky will be cobalt with a bit of cloud in it. So I'm just keep adding water to it, lightening it here, and pushing it to the top. I haven't used this paper before, so I'm interested to see how the colors react to it. So while it was still damp, I didn't want to have the blue going into the yellow and creating a green, so I'm going to paint the horizon here. So with the damp paper, I'm just touching in some ultramarine, mix of ultramarine and a bit of Payne's gray in there. I just want to create like a stand of trees in the background. So I'm using a mop brush and just tapping the ink into the damp paper. So it looks kind of blue to me at the moment. So I'm going to go in and grab some burnt sienna and create a little clump of trees or bush that's a little closer, so it's a little more defined. Now at this point, I hadn't decided if I'm going, what season I was going to do. I hadn't really selected the colors at all. I just had a vision in my head of trees and buildings and hadn't decided what season it was. So by the looks of it, I think we're going with a fall scene here, autumn scene. Now for I mentioned the cobalt, I just wet the top of the page with the hockey brush. Didn't over soak it, and now I'm just going in some really light cobalt and just making some horizontal strokes. Oh, there's my please like and subscribe. I have to mention this. Thank you so much for everyone who's already jumped on, and I really appreciate all the nice comments too. It means a lot. So thanks so much. And if you haven't liked and subscribed, please go ahead and then like and subscribe. So on the right-hand side, I'm going to jump back into the painting here. The tree on the right, I just added that because it looked a little blank over there. So I just put a little fall tree in there. A combination of raw sienna and cadmium yellow. Now for my big foliage here, loaded up the mop brush with cadmium yellow. And I'm just laying it in. Really wet mixture. Throwing some oranges in there as well. And as I work my way down the foliage, I try to make it a little bit darker, just to indicate some kind of a shade under the trees. Tree. It's actually one tree. It's actually joined at the hip there. So there, I'm just dabbing in orange. It's still super wet, so I'm laying in some orange, and then as I go even further down, I'm going to put in some burnt sienna. Try and show some form of shadow on the underside of the tree. Now it didn't get quite dark enough, so I'm just grabbing some burnt umber as well. Given that it's a fall scene, now that we've decided that, I can put some burnt umber in there as well. Out comes the salt. This is something I wanted to try with today. This is what I had in mind anyway. I didn't want to over ink these trees, So I got some salt to create some texture within the foliage. So I just dropped a bit of salt in there and we'll see how that works out. It's starting to separate already up there. So while that is drying, I'm moving to the foreground here. And started with some Naples yellow, some yellow ochre, and as I move closer to the bottom of the page, I'm starting to make the paint a little bit darker. It's really wet, so I'm just laying it in there. Left a couple of white spots in the immediate foreground to just to make a couple more rocks in there. It wasn't getting dark enough for me, so I've got the what have I got there? Olive green and a bit of some undersea green there too, which is a super dark green. And there comes the salt again. Well, it's damp. Throwing some salt in the foreground to give it that weedy, flowery look. Now, to be honest with you, at this point, I haven't decided what color the buildings are. I usually have an image in my head of what I want the overall composition to look like, but often don't think about the colors until I get to this point. So I'm just painting everything I know, painting some rocks, painting the foreground, painting the foliage, which I've decided is fall, and using some Payne's gray there for the rocks. Okay, still not sure of the colors, so let's go in with the shadows. I've decided to put the light up at the upper right, while my shadow is going to be cast to the left here. That's just a mixture of ultramarine and Payne's gray. But while I'm doing all that, you'll note that I've got a template for this, by the way, over on Patreon, and I didn't ink in the foliage on purpose. I wanted to let the paint decide where the leaves would be. So later on, I can go in with the ink and just, sketch around the outside of the foliage. And here's just a whole mix of browns and blues from the bottom of my palette there for the trunk. I'm going against my rules here. I'm actually working from the bottom up here, and it's kind of gets me in a bit of trouble. I should work from the middle out, if that makes sense. So I've gone over to the rigger brush here to do the finer branches. Rigger brush doesn't hold a lot of paint, so you just keep laying it in on the side. And that's a bit of an awkward angle, but there we seem to have the trunks almost done. Now my foreground got a little bit too light for me, a little too uninteresting, so I'm just putting in some more of the undersea green and showing kind of like a shadow coming from the right. Could be a building, could be a tree, but I'm going to dress that up a bit. Yeah, I just indicate there's something over there on the right casting a shadow. And I think it helps the picture. So again, still haven't decided what color the roofs are going to be. So let's paint the stuff I know. So I'm just doing the chimney stacks, getting over here to this big old fireplace on the left. Just a mix of blues and burnt sienna. Half of that's in shadow, so I'll have to go back in and darken that up to the bottom part of it anyway. So here, we're going over to the roofs finally. by the looks of it, I didn't want to make it too crazy and go with some crazy colors. So I ended up using almost the same colors of the tree, which is a bit of a mistake. So I got to have a workaround for that. So I'm trying to make it a bit darker there. It's cadmium yellow and burnt sienna. I guess that one's okay. So we'll try and make this one even darker because it's closer. The brush was too big, so I'm going in with the, what have I got there? Like a 1/4 inch flat brush so I can get in that little rectangle. I chose this composition also. So simple, it's just like rectangles and triangles over on the left there. I really wanted to try out the salt. That's what I want to do today. And by the looks of it, so I might as well tell you what I'm doing there. I'm just going very lightly with the pen around the outside of the paint. I'm reaching over into the middle of the painting because the bottom right is still wet. So that's why I look like I'm awkwardly straining with the pen to get it to go as far as possible. So it appears as if it's dried, and I'm just going to paint in the windows with Payne's Gray. Give myself a nice bright red door here. So I've got two orangey brown roofs. So let's have this middle structure jump out. And that would be a sap green. I'm using that 1/4 inch flat brush again, but that's a sap green. I'm going to put a bit of yellow into that, just to change the color up and have it look like a bit of lights hit at the top. So that's cadmium yellow going in. I'm just dragging that into the sap green. Not quite what I wanted, but it'll do for today. And now we'll just clean up the inking here. Really light scratches around the edge, not leaning on the pen and not putting too much detail, just indicating the outside of the foliage. We'll draw on these rocks. We'll get this guy signed. Yeah, get the tape off it, have a look at it, and there you go. Thanks for dropping by. See you again soon.